Chapter 1. A little girl named Diana. Diana Frances Spencer was born on a cold July morning in 1961. The sun was shy that day. Clouds hung low over the English countryside. But inside the grand house of Park House, there was excitement. A baby girl had arrived. She was the third daughter of John and Frances Spencer, and everyone hoped for a boy. Diana's family was important. The Spencers had lived in England for centuries. They were close to the royal family. Their home was big, with beautiful gardens and long hallways. But not everything in Diana's life was grand. Behind the tall doors of Park House, life was sometimes sad. Diana's parents didn't get along. They argued often, and their voices echoed through the house. Diana, just a little girl, didn't understand why. She loved them both. She wanted them to be happy. But they weren't. When Diana was 6, her parents divorced. It was a painful time. Her mother left, and her father stayed. Diana and her siblings, Sarah, Jane, and Charles, stayed too. Diana missed her mother deeply. She often cried in her room. Divorce wasn't common in the 1960s, especially for families like hers. People whispered about it. Diana felt lonely. But Diana found comfort in other things. She loved animals, dogs, cats, rabbits, any creature that needed care. She spent hours in the garden, playing with her pets. She talked to them as if they understood her. "Don't worry," she would say, stroking their soft fur. "I'll take care of you." Diana also loved being outside. She explored the fields near her home, picking flowers and running through the grass. She felt free there. The countryside became her escape. At school, Diana was quiet. She wasn't the top student. In fact, she often struggled. Reading and writing didn't come easily to her, but Diana had other talents. She was kind. If someone felt sad, Diana noticed, she would sit with them and listen. Her teachers said she had a big heart. Diana also loved music and dancing. She dreamed of becoming a ballerina. In her room, she would play music and twirl around. She practiced for hours, balancing on her toes. One day, she thought, I'll be on a stage. But as Diana grew older, she realized she was too tall to be a ballerina. It broke her heart. Still, she didn't give up on dancing. It remained her passion. Diana was happiest when she could help others. Even as a child, she cared deeply for people. If her friends were upset, she would cheer them up. If her siblings were hurt, she was the first to comfort them. Her nanny once said, "Diana was different. She felt things deeply. She had a gift for making people feel special." But life wasn't always kind to Diana. She often felt left out. Her sisters were older and her brother was younger. She didn't fit in perfectly with either. Sometimes she felt like she didn't belong anywhere. When Diana was 9, her father remarried. His new wife was named Rain. Diana didn't like her. She thought Rain was strict and cold. It made home life even harder. Diana often wished things could go back to the way they were before her parents' divorce. Despite these challenges, Diana grew into a lovely young girl. She had bright blue eyes and a warm smile. People noticed her kindness and her gentle nature. Her friends loved being around her. Diana, one friend said, made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. As Diana grew older, she dreamed of a different life. She didn't want to stay in the countryside forever. She wanted to help people, to make the world a better place. But how? She wasn't sure yet. Diana's teenage years were full of changes. She went to a boarding school far from home. It was scary at first. The school was big, and Diana didn't know anyone. But she quickly made friends. She was funny, kind, and easy to talk to. At school, Diana continued to struggle with academics, but she shone in other areas. She loved sports and music. She joined the choir and the hockey team. Her teachers said she had a cheerful spirit. Even though she was away at school, Diana missed her family. She wrote letters to her father and called home often. She worried about her little brother, Charles. "Look after him," she told her sisters. "He needs us." Diana also missed her mother. They didn't see each other often. But when they did, Diana felt happy. She loved spending time with her. They laughed, talked, and shared special moments. By the time Diana finished school, she wasn't sure what to do next. Many of her friends were going to university, but Diana wasn't academic. Instead, she moved to London. She found a small apartment and started working. Diana's first job was as a nanny. She loved children, so the job suited her. She also worked as a kindergarten assistant. Diana loved the kids. They made her laugh. She enjoyed teaching them, playing with them, and listening to their stories. Diana's life in London was exciting. She explored the city, made new friends, and learned to live on her own. But deep down, she felt something was missing. She wanted more. She wanted to make a bigger difference. Then, one day, everything changed. Diana met someone who would change her life forever. A prince. Diana's early years were full of love and pain, joy and sadness. She wasn't perfect, and her life wasn't easy. But those years shaped her. They taught her to care for others. They gave her the strength to face the challenges ahead. And they showed the world that even a little girl from the countryside could grow up to be extraordinary. What happened next? Diana's journey had only just begun. Chapter 2. The Shy Teenager. Diana wasn't always the confident, smiling woman the world would later know. As a teenager, she was quiet and shy. She often felt unsure of herself. She wasn't the best student or the loudest voice in the room. But even then, there was something special about her. Something people couldn't quite explain. Diana went to several boarding schools as a teenager. Her first school was Riddlesworth Hall, a small and cozy school in the countryside. She was just 9 years old when she started there. At first, she was homesick. She missed her family, especially her younger brother, Charles. The big, quiet halls of the school felt lonely. But Diana didn't let that stop her. She quickly made friends. Diana wasn't a top student. She didn't enjoy sitting still in class. Subjects like math and science didn't interest her. But she loved art, music, and sports. She was creative, and her teachers noticed. Diana has a gentle talent. one teacher said. She tries hard and always helps others. When Diana turned 12, she moved to another school, Westheath School in Kent. This was a bigger school with more students and more activities. Diana was nervous about starting somewhere new. Would she make friends? Would she fit in? At Westheath, Diana began to find her place. She wasn't the star of the class, but she was kind and warm. She had a way of making people feel special. If someone felt sad or left out, Diana would notice. She would sit with them and listen. Her friends admired her for this. Diana was like sunshine, one classmate said. She made everyone feel better. Diana loved sports. She played hockey and tennis, often running across the fields with a big smile on her face. She wasn't the strongest player, but she gave it her all. Diana also enjoyed swimming. The water made her feel free, like she could escape the world for a little while. But there was one thing Diana loved most of all: dancing. At Westheath, she discovered ballet and modern dance. She spent hours in the studio practicing her moves. She twirled, leaped, and stretched, her long legs moving gracefully across the floor. Dance made her feel alive. It gave her confidence. Diana once dreamed of becoming a ballerina. She pictured herself on stage, performing in front of a large audience. But as she grew taller, she realized this dream might not come true. Ballerinas needed to be petite, and Diana was already taller than most girls her age. This broke her heart. Still, she didn't give up on dancing. She kept practicing, simply because it brought her joy. Even though Diana loved her friends and activities at school, she often felt unsure of herself. She didn't think she was pretty or smart. She compared herself to her older sisters, Sarah and Jane. They seemed so confident, so perfect. Diana wished she could be more like them. When Diana was 16, she left Westheath. Her father decided she should go to a finishing school in Switzerland. It was called Institut Alpen Wiedemannet, and it was high up in the mountains. The school was meant to teach young women how to be proper ladies. They learned French, how to cook, and how to host fancy parties. Diana didn't like it. The other girls seemed so elegant, so sophisticated. Diana felt awkward and out of place. She missed England. She missed her family and friends. After just one term, Diana came home. Back in England, Diana wasn't sure what to do next. She didn't have the best grades. She wasn't ready for university. She felt lost. But Diana was determined to find her way. She decided to move to London. At just 17 years old, Diana packed her bags and left for the big city. She found a small apartment in Earl's Court, a lively area in London. She shared the flat with her friends. It was small and messy, but Diana loved it. For the first time, she felt independent. In London, Diana took small jobs to earn money. She worked as a nanny, taking care of young children. She loved playing with them, reading them stories, and making them laugh. She also worked as a kindergarten assistant. Diana was patient and gentle, and the children adored her. Even though Diana was shy, she began to come out of her shell in London. She made new friends and went to parties. She loved shopping for clothes, especially colorful sweaters and pretty skirts. She didn't know it yet, but her style would one day inspire millions. Despite the fun of city life, Diana still dreamed of more. She wanted to do something meaningful. She wanted to help people. But how? She didn't know yet. At the time, Diana didn't realize her life was about to change forever. One day, her sister Sarah introduced her to someone. A prince. His name was Charles. He was older than Diana and very different from her. But something about Diana caught his eye. For Diana, meeting Charles was exciting and nerve-wracking. He was serious and important. She was young and inexperienced. But Charles seemed interested. They talked, laughed, and got to know each other. Diana couldn't believe it. Was this the beginning of a fairy tale? As Diana spent more time with Charles, her life began to change. She was no longer just a shy teenager. She was becoming someone the world would soon notice. Her warmth, her kindness, and her unique charm began to shine. Looking back, Diana's teenage years were full of ups and downs. She struggled with self-confidence. She felt lost at times. But she also discovered her passions: dancing, helping others, and connecting with people. These years shaped her into the young woman who would one day become a princess. And much more. Diana didn't know it yet, but her journey was only just beginning. The world was about to meet her, and nothing would ever be the same again. Diana's teenage story reminds us that even the shyest people can grow into something extraordinary. What happens next? The shy teenager steps into the spotlight and begins a life filled with love, challenges, and unforgettable moments. Chapter 3. Meeting a Prince. Once upon a time, in the quiet English countryside, a young woman met a prince. Her name was Diana Spencer. She was just 16 years old. The prince's name was Charles, and he was much older, 12 years older in fact. He wasn't just any man. He was the future King of England. The first time they met, it wasn't anything special. Diana's older sister, Sarah, was dating Charles at the time. Diana thought he seemed kind, but he didn't pay much attention to her. After all, she was still a teenager. Charles was focused on Sarah. A few years later, everything changed. By this time, Diana had moved to London. She was 19 years old and working as a kindergarten assistant. Her days were busy, filled with children's laughter and little hands pulling at her. She loved her job, but her life was simple. She never dreamed that soon she would become the center of attention. One day, Diana was invited to a party. Charles would be there. By now, he was no longer dating Sarah. He was single, and everyone wondered who he would marry. Diana didn't think much about it. She was just excited to attend the party. When Charles saw Diana again, he noticed her in a new way. She was no longer a shy teenager. She had grown into a graceful, kind young woman. She smiled warmly and listened carefully when he spoke. Something about Diana caught his eye. At the party, they talked and laughed. Diana told Charles about her work with children. She spoke about her love for the countryside and her passion for helping others. Charles found her refreshing. She wasn't like the other women he met at royal events. She was genuine. After that party, Charles began to call Diana. He invited her to visit him at his family's homes. Diana was nervous. She wasn't used to the world of royalty. The grand palaces and formal dinners felt overwhelming. But Charles made her feel at ease. He was kind and thoughtful. The media soon found out about their relationship. Suddenly, Diana's quiet life in London was gone. Photographers followed her everywhere. They waited outside her flat. They shouted her name and snapped pictures whenever she stepped outside. Diana felt scared. She wasn't used to this attention. Despite the pressure, Charles and Diana continued to see each other. Charles liked Diana's warmth and her sense of humor. Diana admired Charles's intelligence and his dedication to his royal duties. But they were very different people. Charles loved serious conversations and classical music. Diana preferred dancing and laughing with her friends. After only a few months of dating, Charles proposed. It was February 1981. He asked Diana to marry him while they were at Windsor Castle. Diana was shocked. She hadn't expected it to happen so soon. But she said yes. The engagement was announced to the world. People were thrilled. They loved Diana's sweetness and her beauty. They called her the perfect princess. Diana, however, felt overwhelmed. She was happy, but also scared. Was she ready for this life? The ring Charles gave Diana was beautiful. It had a large blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It sparkled in the light. But behind her smile, Diana felt unsure. She barely knew Charles. Their relationship had been so quick. Was this truly love? The couple gave their first interview after the engagement. A reporter asked them if they were in love. Diana quickly said, "Of course." But Charles added something strange. He said, "Whatever in love means." Diana laughed nervously, but those words stayed with her. As the wedding day approached, Diana's nerves grew. The media attention was intense. Everywhere she went, cameras followed. People wanted to know everything about her, what she wore, what she ate, how she felt. Diana felt trapped. Charles was often busy with his royal duties. Diana spent many days alone. She started to feel lonely and unsure about the future. But she told herself to be strong. She believed that once they were married, everything would get better. The wedding day finally arrived, July 29th, 1981. It was a day the whole world was waiting for. Over 750 million people watched on television as Diana walked into St. Paul's Cathedral. She wore a dress made of silk and lace. It had a train that stretched 25 feet behind her. Diana looked like a fairy tale princess, but inside she was nervous. Her hands shook as she held her bouquet of flowers. The crowd cheered loudly, but Diana barely heard them. She kept her eyes on Charles, hoping for reassurance. The ceremony was grand and beautiful. Charles and Diana exchanged vows and rings. They promised to love and honor each other. As they left the cathedral, the bells rang out, and the crowd roared with joy. Diana smiled, but deep down, she felt unsure. After the wedding, Charles and Diana went on their honeymoon. They traveled on a royal yacht and later stayed in Balmoral, the Queen's estate in Scotland. But the honeymoon wasn't what Diana had imagined. Charles spent much of his time reading or painting. Diana felt lonely again. Over the coming months, the cracks in their relationship began to show. Charles had a busy royal schedule. Diana struggled with the pressures of being a princess. The media continued to follow her every move. She felt like she could never escape. But there were happy moments too. Diana loved meeting people during royal events. She had a natural ability to connect with others. Whether it was a child, an elderly person, or someone struggling, Diana made them feel important. Still, questions lingered in Diana's mind. Was this the life she wanted? Could she truly be herself in this royal world? And most of all, did Charles really love her the way she needed him to? Meeting Charles had changed Diana's life forever. At first, it seemed like a dream come true. A prince, a proposal, a royal wedding. But as Diana would soon learn, fairy tales aren't always what they seem. Diana's story was just beginning. The shy young woman was now the Princess of Wales. The world adored her. But behind the smiles and waves, her struggles were only just starting. What would happen next? Only time would tell. Chapter 4. A Royal Wedding, July 29th, 1981. It was a day that the world would never forget. The streets of London were filled with excitement. People waved flags and cheered loudly. Millions of people were watching on their televisions. This was not just any wedding. It was the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. Diana was just 20 years old. She was about to become a princess. She had never imagined this moment growing up in the countryside. Now, she was at the center of the world's attention. Early that morning, Diana prepared for her big day. She was in Clarence House, surrounded by her family and her bridesmaids. Her heart was pounding. She felt nervous and excited. Outside, the streets were alive with music and cheers. Inside, Diana's thoughts raced. Am I ready for this? She wondered. Her wedding dress was stunning. It was made of ivory silk and decorated with lace and pearls. The designers, David and Elizabeth Emanuel, had kept it a secret until the big day. The dress had a long train, 25 feet. It was so long that it barely fit in the carriage that would take Diana to St. Paul's Cathedral. The moment Diana stepped out of the carriage, the crowd gasped. She looked like a true fairy tale princess. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly. Her veil covered her face, adding a touch of mystery. She held a beautiful bouquet of flowers in her hands. The bells of St. Paul's Cathedral rang loudly. Inside the church, 3,500 guests waited. Royalty, World leaders and celebrities filled the grand space. The red carpet stretched down the aisle. All eyes were on Diana as she walked in. Diana's father, Earl Spencer, walked her down the aisle. The train of her dress flowed behind her. The organ played a grand tune. Diana kept her head high, but her hands trembled slightly. She smiled softly, but inside, she felt overwhelmed. Prince Charles stood at the altar, waiting for Diana. He looked serious, but there was a small smile on his face. When Diana reached him, he whispered, "You look beautiful." Those words made Diana feel a little calmer. The ceremony began. The Archbishop of Canterbury led the vows. Diana's voice was soft but steady as she repeated the words, "I, Diana Frances, take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George, to my wedded husband." Charles followed with his vows. But there was a small mistake. Diana accidentally said Charles's name wrong. Instead of saying Charles Philip Arthur George, she said Philip Charles Arthur George. People noticed, but they laughed gently. It was a small, human moment in such a grand event. After the vows, Charles and Diana exchanged rings. Diana's ring was a large sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It sparkled brightly under the cathedral's lights. When the Archbishop announced them as husband and wife, the crowd outside roared with joy. The couple walked back down the aisle together. Diana's dress glittered, and her smile grew wider. The bells rang again, and the couple stepped outside to greet the cheering crowd. Their next stop was Buckingham Palace. Diana and Charles rode there in a grand carriage. Crowds lined the streets, waving and shouting their good wishes. Diana smiled and waved back. She felt a mix of emotions, joy, nervousness, and hope for the future. At Buckingham Palace, the royal family gathered on the balcony. This was the moment everyone was waiting for. Charles and Diana stepped out to wave to the crowd. The noise was incredible. People chanted, "Kiss, kiss!" Charles leaned toward Diana. She blushed, but smiled. Then they shared a quick, sweet kiss. The crowd erupted into cheers. It was a magical moment. But behind the smiles and cheers, Diana's thoughts were complex. This was the beginning of a new life, a royal life. It was exciting, but also terrifying. Diana wasn't sure if she was ready for the pressures that came with being a princess. That evening, the couple attended a grand reception. The finest food was served, and the music played late into the night. Diana looked radiant, but she felt tired. The day had been overwhelming. She wondered what her future would hold. The next morning, Diana woke up as the Princess of Wales. Her title was official. She was now part of the royal family. But what did that really mean? Her honeymoon began almost immediately. Diana and Charles spent the first part of it on a royal yacht. The sea sparkled under the summer sun. It should have been a perfect getaway. But Diana quickly realized that her new life wasn't as simple as she had hoped. Charles brought books to read during the honeymoon. He spent hours studying and writing letters. Diana felt lonely. She wanted to spend more time together, laughing and talking. But Charles seemed distant. After the yacht, they traveled to Balmoral, the Queen's estate in Scotland. The countryside was beautiful, with rolling hills and quiet streams. But Diana still felt out of place. The royal family had traditions that were unfamiliar to her. She tried to fit in, but it wasn't easy. Despite these challenges, Diana kept smiling. She wanted to make her new life work. She believed that love would grow between her and Charles. She believed she could handle the pressures of being a princess. But even early on, Diana felt the weight of her new role. The media followed her everywhere. Photographers hid in bushes and waited outside doors. Every outfit she wore, every word she said, became news. Diana couldn't escape. Still, Diana had moments of happiness. She loved meeting people. Her warmth and kindness touched everyone she met. Children, elderly people, and those struggling in life. Diana made them feel special. She had a unique gift. Looking back on her wedding day, Diana often said it was both the happiest and the most overwhelming day of her life. It was the beginning of her journey as the Princess of Wales. It was also the start of challenges she couldn't yet see. The royal wedding was magical for the world to watch. But for Diana, it was just the first step into a life that would test her strength and her heart. Diana's wedding day was a mix of fairy tale and reality. The princess the world adored was beginning a journey filled with love, challenges, and unforgettable moments. What would come next for Diana? Only time would tell. Chapter 5. Life in the Spotlight. When Diana became the Princess of Wales, her life changed forever. Suddenly, she wasn't just Lady Diana Spencer from the countryside. She was a global sensation. People wanted to see her, hear her, and know everything about her. Cameras followed her everywhere. Newspapers printed her picture on the front page almost every day. At first, Diana tried to embrace this new life. She smiled for the cameras and waved to the crowds. She wanted to be the perfect princess, but the attention quickly became overwhelming. Diana was only 20 years old. She was young, shy, and still learning who she was. Now, millions of people were watching her every move. The paparazzi were everywhere. They waited outside her home. They followed her car. If she went to the shop or took a walk, they surrounded her. Flashing cameras made it hard to see. People shouted her name, asking her to smile or look their way. Diana began to feel trapped. Even when Diana traveled, she couldn't escape the attention. On royal tours with Charles, crowds lined the streets to catch a glimpse of her. In Australia, over 2 million people came to see her. In the United States, she met celebrities, world leaders, and even danced with John Travolta. The world adored Diana. People called her the People's Princess because she had a special way of connecting with others. Unlike other royals, Diana didn't seem distant or formal. She was warm and approachable. If she met a child, she knelt down to their level. If she visited a hospital, she held patients' hands. Her kindness was real, and people felt it. But behind the smiles, Diana's life was far from perfect. She struggled with the pressures of being in the public eye. She often felt lonely. Charles was busy with his royal duties and interests, like polo and gardening. Diana didn't feel supported. At home, things weren't easy either. Diana found palace life difficult. The rules were strict, and traditions were everywhere. Diana wasn't used to this. She tried her best to fit in, but she often felt out of place. Her relationship with Charles also became more strained. The world saw a beautiful couple, but their marriage was far from happy. Charles had his own struggles, and he didn't always understand Diana's needs. Diana often felt ignored. The pressure began to affect Diana's health. She developed an eating disorder called bulimia. She felt out of control in her new life, and food became a way to cope with her emotions. Diana later spoke openly about this struggle. She wanted to help others who might feel the same pain. Despite these challenges, Diana kept working hard as a princess. She threw herself into her royal duties. She visited schools, hospitals, and charities. She shook hands with people who were sick or struggling. Many of these moments were caught on camera. They showed the world Diana's compassion and bravery. One famous moment happened in 1987. Diana visited a hospital where patients were being treated for AIDS. At the time, many people were afraid of the disease. Some even believed they could catch it by touching someone who had it. But Diana wasn't afraid. She sat beside an AIDS patient and held his hand. Cameras captured this powerful moment. It changed how people thought about the disease. Another moment came during her visit to Angola in 1997. Diana walked through a minefield wearing a protective vest. She wanted to bring attention to the danger of landmines. Her courage inspired the world. Even with all her charity work, Diana couldn't escape the media's gaze. The press followed her everywhere. They printed stories about her marriage, her struggles, and even her fashion. Diana's clothes became as famous as she was. Her elegant dresses and colorful suits were copied by women around the world. But the attention wasn't always kind. The media often invaded Diana's privacy. They published pictures of her when she wasn't ready. They spread rumors about her personal life. Diana tried to stay strong, but it hurt. In public, Diana smiled and waved, but in private, she often cried. She missed the simple life she once had. She missed being able to walk down the street without being followed. She missed feeling free. Despite everything, Diana remained focused on her mission. She wanted to make a difference in the world. She wanted to help those who were forgotten. Her work with charities grew even stronger. She visited orphanages, schools, and shelters. She raised money for important causes. Diana's warmth and kindness won hearts everywhere. Children ran to hug her. Patients smiled when she entered the room. Even world leaders admired her. Diana didn't just fulfill her royal duties, she gave them a deeper meaning. But Diana was still searching for happiness. She wanted to find her own voice, separate from her role as a princess. She wanted to be more than just a public figure. By the late 1980s, Diana started to speak out about her struggles. In interviews, she shared her feelings about the pressures of royal life. She talked about her battle with bulimia and her feelings of loneliness. People admired her honesty. Her openness made her even more beloved. People saw Diana as someone real, someone who understood their pain. She wasn't just a princess. She was a human being with flaws and feelings. But Diana's honesty also brought challenges. Some members of the royal family didn't like that she spoke so openly. They preferred to keep personal matters private. This caused tension. By the early 1990s, Diana's marriage to Charles was falling apart. The couple spent less time together. The press noticed, and rumors began to spread. Diana felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Through it all, Diana stayed strong. She focused on her two sons, William and Harry. They were her greatest source of joy. Diana was a loving and playful mother. She wanted them to have a normal life, even in the royal family. Looking back, Diana's life in the spotlight was both a blessing and a curse. She used her fame to help others, but it also brought her pain. She was admired by millions, but she often felt alone. Diana's time as a princess showed the world her courage and compassion. She became a symbol of hope and kindness. But behind the scenes, she faced struggles that only a few truly understood. Her story wasn't over yet. Diana was about to take a new path. A path that would change her life and the world forever. Diana's journey in the spotlight was full of highs and lows. The shy girl from the countryside had become the people's princess. But what came next would define her legacy forever. Chapter 6. A Mother's Love. When Diana became a mother, her whole world changed. It was a new kind of happiness, one that filled her heart with love and hope. Her sons, William and Harry, became the center of her life. No matter what challenges she faced, Diana's love for her boys never wavered. On June 21st, 1982, Diana gave birth to her first son, Prince William. It was a bright day at St. Mary's Hospital in London. For the royal family, it was an important moment. William was the future king of England. But for Diana, it was something much simpler and much deeper. She was a mother now, and William was her baby. Diana insisted on something new for the royal family. She didn't want to give birth in a palace, as queens and princesses had done before. She chose a hospital instead. It was her way of saying that she wanted to do things differently. When Diana held William for the first time, tears filled her eyes. His tiny fingers, his soft cry. She was overwhelmed with love. "He's perfect," she whispered. She knew her life had changed forever. 2 years later, on September 15th, 1984, Diana gave birth to her second son, Prince Harry. Once again, Diana chose the same hospital. Harry was smaller than William, with a little tuft of red hair. Diana adored him instantly. Diana loved being a mother. From the moment her boys were born, she was devoted to them. She didn't leave the care of her children entirely to nannies, as many royals did. Diana wanted to be there for every moment. The first smile, the first steps, the first words. She believed that her boys needed her love and presence more than anything else. Unlike other members of the royal family, Diana wanted William and Harry to have a childhood that was as normal as possible. She wanted them to see the world outside of palaces and castles. She took them to parks and playgrounds. She let them wear casual clothes instead of royal uniforms. Sometimes she even waited in line at McDonald's to buy them hamburgers. Imagine that. A princess standing in line for fast food. People were surprised, but Diana didn't care. She wanted her boys to know life outside the royal bubble. Diana also made sure her sons saw the world as it really was. She took them to homeless shelters and hospitals. She wanted them to understand that not everyone was as lucky as they were. "You must always think of others," she told them. "You have the power to help people." Diana loved spending time with her boys. They laughed, played, and shared so many happy moments together. She was playful and silly with them, often joining in their games. She once dressed up as a policeman and pretended to arrest them as a joke. William and Harry adored her. One of Diana's favorite things to do was to surprise her sons. On one occasion, she invited their favorite singer, Elton John, to their house. The boys were thrilled. Diana loved seeing their faces light up with joy. As a mother, Diana was fiercely protective. She wanted to shield her boys from the constant attention of the media. But it wasn't easy. Photographers followed them everywhere. William and Harry couldn't even go on holiday without cameras flashing in their faces. This made Diana angry. "They're just children," she would say. Despite the pressures of royal life, Diana created a warm and loving environment for her boys. She hugged them often and told them she loved them every day. She wanted them to feel secure and cherished. Diana also encouraged William and Harry to have fun and take risks. She took them skiing, rode roller coasters with them, and even joined them in water fights. Her laughter was infectious. She wanted her sons to see her not just as a princess, but as their mom. But being a mother wasn't always easy for Diana. She faced many struggles in her marriage with Charles. Their relationship grew colder, and they spent less time together. Diana often felt lonely, but her boys gave her strength. "Everything I do for them," she once said. William and Harry were her motivation to keep going, even on the hardest days. As William and Harry grew older, Diana taught them important lessons about kindness and compassion. She showed them how to treat people with respect, no matter who they were. She brought them along on her charity visits so they could see the impact of helping others. William and Harry admired their mother deeply. They saw her bravery and her warmth. They knew she wasn't perfect, but they loved her for being real. In public, Diana was often photographed with her boys. The world loved seeing the playful, loving bond they shared. But behind closed doors, their relationship was even stronger. Diana wasn't just their mother. She was their best friend. Even when life became more complicated, Diana's love for her boys never changed. After her divorce from Charles, she made sure that William and Harry still had a strong relationship with their father. She wanted them to feel loved by both parents. Diana always put her sons first. She taught them to be kind, brave, and true to themselves. Her influence shaped the men they would become. William and Harry have often said that their mother was their greatest inspiration. Her love gave them confidence. Her lessons taught them to care for others. Looking back, Diana's years as a mother were the happiest of her life. She found joy in simple moments, reading bedtime stories, sharing jokes, and watching her boys grow up. Diana's love for William and Harry was unconditional. It was a love that gave her strength in the darkest times. It was a love that would continue to shine even after she was gone. Diana's role as a mother defined who she was. She wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was Mom. Her love for William and Harry left a legacy that would live on forever. What came next in Diana's life would challenge her strength and change the world. But through it all, her love for her boys remained her guiding light. Chapter 7. Cracks in the Crown. Diana's wedding had been a fairy tale, or so it seemed. The world watched as she became the Princess of Wales. She smiled brightly and waved to the crowds, but behind the scenes, her life was not as perfect as it appeared. From the very beginning, Diana and Charles struggled to understand each other. They were so different. Diana was warm, emotional, and caring. Charles was serious, intellectual, and distant. They often found it hard to connect. Their age gap didn't help. Charles was 32 when they married. Diana was only 20. She was still discovering who she was, while Charles had already lived much of his life. Diana wanted love and attention, but Charles had his own interests and royal duties. Soon after the wedding, Diana began to feel lonely. Charles was busy with his royal responsibilities. He traveled a lot, leaving Diana alone at the palace. She missed him and hoped for more time together. But Charles didn't seem to understand how she felt. Diana also struggled with royal life. There were so many rules and traditions. Everything she did was watched and judged. If she made a small mistake, it was in the newspapers the next day. Diana felt like she could never relax. The media only made things worse. The press followed her everywhere, hoping to catch her in a private moment. Diana hated it. She felt like she had no escape. But the biggest challenge in Diana's marriage was not the media or royal life. It was something far more painful. Charles had never stopped loving someone else, Camilla Parker Bowles. Before Diana, Charles had been very close to Camilla. Their relationship had ended when Charles joined the Navy. Camilla had married someone else, but she and Charles stayed friends. Over time, their friendship became something more. Diana noticed. She saw the way Charles spoke about Camilla. She found a bracelet that Charles had made for her, engraved with the letters F and G, a secret code for their nicknames, Fred and Gladys. It broke Diana's heart. Diana began to feel like she wasn't enough. She was young, beautiful, and loved by the public. But she couldn't compete with Camilla. She once said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage. It was a bit crowded." Diana's pain grew deeper. She developed an eating disorder called bulimia. It started as a way to cope with her emotions. When she felt overwhelmed or unloved, she turned to food. But afterward, she felt guilty and made herself sick. It became a cycle she couldn't break. Despite her struggles, Diana tried to make her marriage work. She wanted to be a good wife and mother. She hoped that Charles would love her the way she loved him, but the distance between them only grew. In public, Diana and Charles appeared happy. They attended royal events, smiled for the cameras, and waved to the crowds. But behind closed doors, they often argued. Diana felt unheard, and Charles felt misunderstood. Over time, their unhappiness became harder to hide. The media noticed that Diana and Charles rarely looked at each other during public events. Rumors of trouble in their marriage began to spread. Diana found comfort in her charity work. She threw herself into helping others, visiting hospitals, and raising awareness for important causes. She felt fulfilled when she was with people who needed her. But at home, she still felt lonely. By the early 1990s, the cracks in their marriage were impossible to ignore. Diana and Charles spent more time apart. The press published stories about their arguments and separate lives. In 1992, the truth came out. A book titled Diana. Her true story was published. It revealed details about Diana's struggles, her bulimia, her loneliness, and her feelings about Camilla. The world was shocked. For the first time, people saw the truth behind the royal fairy tale. Diana wasn't just a smiling princess. She was a woman in pain. But Diana's decision to share her story was brave. She wanted the world to know that she wasn't perfect. She wanted to show that even a princess could feel lost and broken. In 1994, Charles gave an interview on television. He admitted that he had been unfaithful to Diana. He said that their marriage had broken down. This was another blow to Diana. She felt humiliated. In 1995, Diana gave her own interview. It was raw and emotional. She spoke about her struggles, her marriage, and her eating disorder. She said, "I'd like to be a queen in people's hearts." Her honesty touched millions. After that interview, it was clear that Diana and Charles could not stay together. In 1996, they divorced. Diana lost her royal title, but she didn't lose the love of the people. The end of Diana's marriage was painful, but it also gave her freedom. She no longer had to pretend. She could focus on her children, her charity work, and herself. Looking back, Diana's struggles in her marriage were a turning point in her life. They showed her strength and courage. She faced heartbreak, loneliness, and public judgment, but she never gave up. Diana's story reminded the world that even the most beautiful fairy tales can have cracks. But those cracks don't have to break us. They can make us stronger. Diana's courage to share her pain changed how people saw her. She was no longer just a princess in a palace. She was a woman with feelings, flaws, and incredible strength. The next chapter of her life would show the world the true power of her compassion and bravery. Chapter 8. The People's Princess. Diana was more than a princess. She was a symbol of kindness and love. People around the world admired her. They saw her not just as a royal figure, but as someone who cared deeply for others. Diana's warmth and compassion made her special. She had a unique way of connecting with people. It didn't matter if they were young or old, rich or poor. Diana made everyone feel important. Her smile lit up the room, and her touch brought comfort. She wasn't afraid to show her feelings. One of Diana's most famous qualities was her ability to help people feel seen. In hospitals, she would sit by patients' beds, holding their hands and listening to their stories. Many of these patients felt forgotten, but Diana made them feel valued. In 1987, Diana did something extraordinary. She visited a hospital where patients were being treated for AIDS. At that time, many people were scared of the disease. Some thought they could catch it just by touching someone with AIDS. Diana wanted to change this fear. During her visit, she sat beside a patient. She reached out and held his hand. Cameras captured the moment. It was powerful. Diana showed the world that kindness was stronger than fear. Her actions helped break the stigma around AIDS. Diana's courage inspired many. She didn't stop at just one visit. She continued to support people with AIDS, raising awareness and funding for research. She used her fame to make a difference. But Diana's compassion didn't end there. She also cared deeply for children. She visited orphanages, schools, and shelters. In these places, she wasn't a royal figure. She was simply Diana. She knelt to the children's level, hugged them, and made them laugh. One little boy in an orphanage said, "She didn't just talk to us, she listened." That was Diana's gift. She listened with her whole heart. Diana also championed mental health. She spoke openly about her own struggles with bulimia and depression. At the time, few people talked about these issues. Diana's honesty helped others feel less alone. She encouraged them to seek help. Another important cause for Diana was the fight against landmines. These dangerous weapons left behind in war zones harmed innocent people, especially children. Diana wanted the world to see this problem. In 1997, she traveled to Angola, a country affected by landmines. She walked through a minefield wearing a protective vest and helmet. The image of Diana in the middle of the danger was unforgettable. She wasn't just raising awareness, she was showing courage. Diana's work with landmines led to real change. Her efforts helped push for an international treaty to ban landmines. This treaty saved countless lives. Diana's compassion reached every corner of the world. She visited leprosy patients in India, hugged children in hospitals in Africa, and spoke to grieving families in America. She didn't see borders or differences. To Diana, Everyone was equal. Her love for people wasn't about duty. It came from her heart. She didn't just attend events or give speeches. She truly cared. This made her different from many other public figures. Even in her personal life, Diana showed kindness. She wrote letters to people who needed encouragement. She supported her staff when they were going through hard times. She treated everyone, no matter their status, with respect. Diana's warmth was especially clear when she was with her sons, William and Harry. She took them to visit shelters and hospitals, teaching them to care for others. "You must understand how lucky you are," she told them. "And you must always help those who are less fortunate." Her boys saw her kindness and were inspired by it. Today, both William and Harry continue their mother's work. They support causes like mental health and children's charities, carrying on Diana's legacy. The media often called Diana the People's Princess. This wasn't just because of her charity work. It was because of how she made people feel. She was approachable and real. Even when Diana was at grand events, she didn't act distant or formal. She took time to speak with the guests. She noticed the small things, someone's nervous smile, a quiet voice, and made people feel comfortable. But being the people's princess wasn't always easy. The constant attention from the press was exhausting. Photographers followed her everywhere. Diana sometimes felt overwhelmed, but she never let it stop her from helping others. In her later years, Diana found new ways to support causes she believed in. After her divorce from Charles, she continued her charity work as a private citizen. She didn't need a royal title to make an impact. In 1996, Diana auctioned off her dresses to raise money for charity. These were the dresses she had worn to important events. The auction raised millions of dollars. Diana said she wanted the money to help people in need. Her generosity touched hearts around the world. People admired her not just for what she did, but for who she was. Diana's final months were some of the most active in her life. She visited Bosnia to meet with victims of landmines. She supported charities for the homeless, the sick, and the poor. She showed no signs of slowing down. Looking back, it's clear why Diana was loved by so many. She wasn't just a princess. She was a person who cared deeply for others. Her actions spoke louder than her words. Diana's life wasn't perfect, and she faced many challenges, but she used her fame to bring light to the darkest places. She showed the world that compassion could make a difference. Today, Diana's legacy lives on. Her work changed lives and inspired millions. She taught us all the power of kindness. Diana's journey as the people's princess wasn't just about charity. It was about love. It was about courage. It was about seeing the world's pain and choosing to help. Diana showed us what it means to care. Her story reminds us that even one person can change the world. Chapter 9. The Power of Kindness. Diana believed in the power of kindness. She knew that even a small act could change someone's life. Her heart was big, and she used her position to make a difference in the world. People admired her not just for her beauty, but for her compassion. One of Diana's most important causes was the fight against AIDS. In the 1980s, people were terrified of the disease. They didn't understand it. Many believed that touching someone with AIDS could make them sick. Patients were treated like outcasts, left alone and afraid. Diana wanted to change this. She wasn't afraid of the disease. She saw the patients as human beings who needed love and support. In 1987, Diana visited an AIDS hospital in London. It was a moment the world would never forget. She sat by a patient's bed and held his hand. Cameras captured the moment. It was powerful. Diana's kindness sent a clear message. People with AIDS deserved respect, care, and compassion. That single act changed how many people thought about AIDS. It broke down fear and stigma. Diana continued her work, visiting hospitals and raising awareness. She became a symbol of hope for those living with the disease. But Diana's kindness didn't stop there. She also cared deeply for the homeless. She believed that everyone deserved dignity, no matter their situation. She often visited shelters, spending time with those who had nowhere else to go. Diana didn't just talk to them. She listened. She wanted to understand their struggles. Many people said she made them feel human again. One winter, Diana visited a shelter in London. She met a young man who had lost everything. He was nervous to speak to her, but Diana's gentle smile put him at ease. "You're not alone," she told him. "Things can get better." Her words stayed with him, giving him hope. Diana also supported charities that helped children. She visited orphanages and schools around the world. She played with the children, laughed with them, and held them in her arms. She believed that every child deserved love and care. In Africa, she visited children who were sick with diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. She didn't just give money, she gave her time. She sat beside them, stroking their hands and speaking softly. For these children, Diana was a beacon of light. Diana's kindness wasn't about grand gestures. It was about small, meaningful moments. She noticed the people others overlooked. She gave her attention to those who felt invisible. Another cause close to Diana's heart was mental health. She knew what it felt like to struggle. She had battled depression and bulimia. She understood how hard it could be to ask for help. Diana wanted to break the silence around mental health. She spoke openly about her own experiences, something few public figures did at the time. Her honesty helped people feel less alone. One of Diana's most famous projects was her work to ban landmines. Landmines were hidden bombs left in the ground after wars. They killed or injured thousands of people each year, many of them children. In 1997, Diana traveled to Angola, a country that had been devastated by war. She visited a minefield to see the danger for herself. Wearing protective gear, she walked carefully across the field. Cameras followed her every step. Diana's visit brought global attention to the issue. Her courage and compassion inspired others to act. Just months after her visit, An international treaty was signed to ban landmines. Diana's efforts saved countless lives. Even in her personal life, Diana's kindness shone through. She wrote letters to people who were struggling, offering them comfort and encouragement. She treated everyone, from her staff to strangers, with respect. One story shows her true character. A hospital worker once shared that Diana had visited their facility on a rainy day. After greeting everyone, Diana noticed the staff outside, standing in the cold and wet. She sent someone to bring them inside and made sure they were comfortable. For Diana, kindness wasn't just about big actions. It was about noticing the little things. A smile, a touch, a kind word. These were her tools for changing the world. Diana's work inspired many people, including her sons, William and Harry. She taught them the importance of compassion. She showed us how to care for others, Harry once said. Her kindness is something I will always carry with me. Today, both William and Harry continue their mother's legacy. They support causes like mental health, AIDS awareness, and helping children in need. Diana's influence lives on through them. The world loved Diana because she made people feel seen and valued. She didn't act like a distant royal. She was approachable, real, and full of love. But kindness wasn't always easy for Diana. She faced criticism from those who thought she was too open, too emotional. Some members of the royal family didn't understand her approach, but Diana didn't let that stop her. She believed in what she was doing. Diana's kindness wasn't just a part of her. It was who she was. She once said, "Helping people is what makes me happy." And she lived by those words every day. Looking back, Diana's life was filled with challenges, but she used those challenges to fuel her mission. She turned her pain into compassion. She showed the world that even in the darkest times, kindness could shine through. Diana's legacy is more than her royal title or her famous style. It's the lives she touched, the hearts she healed, and the hope she gave to millions. Diana's story is a reminder that kindness has the power to change the world. Whether it's holding a hand, offering a smile, or speaking up for what's right, small acts of love can create big waves. Diana proved that compassion is a gift we can all share. Her life may have been short, but her kindness will last forever. Chapter 10. A New Chapter. After Diana's divorce from Prince Charles in 1996, her life changed in many ways. She was no longer the Princess of Wales. She lost her royal title, but she gained something else: freedom. For the first time in years, Diana had the chance to shape her own life. Diana moved into Kensington Palace with her two sons, William and Harry. Her role as a mother became even more important. She wanted her boys to grow up in a loving and supportive home. Despite the difficulties of her divorce, she made sure they felt safe and happy. Diana focused on creating new routines. She started her days with exercise and spent her evenings reading or watching movies with her sons. For the first time in a long while, she began to rediscover who she was. Her charity work continued to be a central part of her life. Diana visited hospitals, schools, and shelters, just as she had before. But now she was doing it as a private citizen. She didn't need a royal title to make a difference. One of Diana's biggest projects was her campaign to ban landmines. In 1997, she visited Bosnia to meet with people who had been injured by landmines. She listened to their stories, hugged them, and promised to help. Her presence brought global attention to the issue. Diana's work in Bosnia wasn't easy. The media followed her everywhere. She couldn't walk down the street without cameras flashing. But Diana didn't let this stop her. She was determined to use her fame for good. Diana also continued to support people with AIDS. She visited clinics and met with patients just as she had done before. She wanted to remind the world that these people deserved love and respect. Despite her hard work, Diana still faced challenges. The press continued to invade her privacy. They followed her car, hid outside her home, and even listened to her phone calls. Diana often felt like she couldn't escape the spotlight. But Diana also found moments of happiness. She traveled to new places and met new people. She visited South Africa, where she worked with Nelson Mandela on projects to help children. She also spent time in New York, supporting charities and meeting with world leaders. In her personal life, Diana began to explore new relationships. In the summer of 1997, she started dating Dodi Fayed, the son of a wealthy businessman. The two spent time together on his yacht, relaxing in the Mediterranean sun. For a brief moment, Diana seemed truly happy. Diana's time with Dodi gave her a sense of adventure. They laughed, swam, and talked about the future. She felt free, like she was finally able to live life on her own terms. But even in these moments of joy, the media was never far away. Photographers followed Diana and Dodi wherever they went. They hid on boats, climbed trees, and used long lenses to capture private moments. Diana often felt angry and frustrated. "Why can't they leave me alone?" she once said. Despite the challenges, Diana's courage and kindness never faded. She continued to put others first. When she wasn't working on major projects, she was writing letters to people in need or visiting those who were sick. She believed that even small acts of kindness could make a big difference. In her final months, Diana's life seemed to be full of possibilities. She had plans to continue her charity work, especially in Africa. She wanted to help children and bring attention to the world's forgotten issues. But Diana's life wasn't without pain. She missed the simpler times before fame. She often said she just wanted to be a good mother and help people. The pressure of being the most famous woman in the world weighed heavily on her. Diana once described herself as a queen of people's hearts. She didn't need a throne or a crown to feel important. She knew her worth came from the love and care she gave to others. On the night of August 31st, 1997, Diana was in Paris with Dodi. They had dinner at the Ritz Hotel and left late in the evening. As they drove through the city, photographers chased their car. The car crashed in a tunnel. Diana was rushed to the hospital, but her injuries were too severe. She passed away in the early hours of the morning, The world was heartbroken. Millions of people mourned Diana's death. Flowers covered the gates of Kensington Palace. People wept openly in the streets. It was clear how much Diana had meant to so many. Diana's final chapter was tragic, but her legacy lives on. She showed the world that kindness and compassion can make a difference. Her life, though short, left an incredible impact. Diana's sons, William and Harry, have continued her work. They have spoken openly about their mother's influence. "She was our inspiration," Harry once said. "Her kindness shaped who we are today." Diana's story is one of strength, love, and resilience. She faced incredible challenges, but never stopped caring for others. Her legacy reminds us all of the power of kindness. Diana's new chapter was filled with both freedom and struggle. She found moments of joy, but also faced great difficulties. Yet through it all, her heart remained open. Diana's story teaches us that even in the face of pain, we can choose love. Chapter 11. A Sudden Goodbye. The summer of 1997 was a time of change for Diana. She was living life on her own terms. She had stepped away from the royal family, focusing on her sons and her charity work. She was also enjoying a new relationship with Dodi Fayed. For the first time in years, she seemed happy. But everything changed on the night of August 31st, 1997. It was a night that would stop the world. Diana had spent the evening in Paris with Dodi. They had dinner at the Ritz Hotel and planned to return to Dodi's apartment. The streets outside were crowded with photographers. Cameras flashed as Diana and Dodi left the hotel. They entered a black Mercedes, hoping to escape the paparazzi. The car sped away, trying to outrun the photographers who were chasing them on motorbikes. The driver, Henry Paul, tried to lose them by taking a tunnel near the Seine River. But in the darkness of the tunnel, disaster struck. The car crashed into a concrete pillar at high speed. The impact was devastating. Dodi and Henry Paul were killed instantly. Diana and her bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, were badly injured. Emergency services arrived quickly. Diana was pulled from the wreckage and rushed to the hospital. Doctors worked desperately to save her, but her injuries were too severe. In the early hours of the morning, Diana was gone. The news spread quickly. At first, people couldn't believe it. How could Diana, so full of life, so loved by millions, be gone? But as the hours passed, the world began to realize the truth. In London, people woke up to the shocking news. Crowds began to gather outside Kensington Palace, Diana's home. Some brought flowers, others brought cards. Many simply stood in silence, their faces filled with grief. The gates of Kensington Palace were soon covered with a sea of flowers. Bouquets, notes, and candles filled the area. People wept openly, hugging strangers and sharing memories of Diana. The world was in mourning. In every country, Diana had touched lives. People remembered her kindness, her courage, and her warmth. They called her the People's Princess. For her sons, William and Harry, the loss was unimaginable. Diana was not just their mother, she was their rock, their comfort, their greatest supporter. They were only 15 and 12 years old when she died. Their grief was deep and private, but the world shared their pain. The days following Diana's death were filled with sadness and questions. People wanted to know what had caused the crash. Reports revealed that the driver, Henry Paul, had been drinking and was speeding. Others blamed the paparazzi, whose relentless pursuit had forced the car to flee. As the days passed, the public's grief only grew. On September 6, 1997, Diana's funeral took place at Westminster Abbey. Over 2,000 guests attended, including world leaders, celebrities, and members of the royal family. Millions more watched the service on television. Diana's coffin was draped in the royal standard and covered with white lilies. Her brother, Earl Spencer, gave a moving speech calling Diana the very essence of compassion. Elton John performed a new version of his song, Candle in the Wind, rewritten in Diana's memory. The most emotional moments of the funeral were the images of her sons. William and Harry walked behind Diana's coffin as it made its way through the streets of London. Their heads were bowed, their faces filled with sorrow. The crowd fell silent, their hearts breaking for the two boys who had lost their mother. Diana was laid to rest on an island at her family's estate, Althorpe. It was a peaceful place surrounded by water and trees. Her family wanted her to have privacy in death, something she had rarely known in life. Even after her funeral, Diana's impact continued to be felt. The days following her death sparked a conversation about the role of the media. Many people blamed the paparazzi for chasing Diana that night. They called for stricter rules to protect public figures from harassment. But Diana's death also reminded people of her extraordinary life. They remembered her work with charities, her bravery, and her kindness. People around the world pledged to continue her mission. For William and Harry, their mother's legacy became a guiding force. They both spoke openly about their grief in later years, sharing how much they missed her. But they also focused on carrying on her work. William once said, "Not a day goes by that I don't think of her. Everything I do is to make her proud." Harry echoed his brother's words, saying, "Her warmth and kindness shaped who we are today." The royal family, too, was forever changed by Diana's life and death. She had brought a new level of humanity to the monarchy. Her influence pushed the royal family to connect more with the public. Today, Diana's legacy is as strong as ever. Her name is still associated with kindness, compassion, and courage. Her sons continue her work, supporting causes close to her heart. Looking back, Diana's death was a tragedy that shook the world. But her life was a gift that inspired millions. Diana's sudden goodbye left a void that could never be filled. But her story didn't end that night in Paris. Her legacy lives on in the people she helped, the lives she touched, and the love she gave. Diana showed us the power of kindness, and for that, she will always be remembered. Chapter 12. Diana's Lasting Legacy. Diana's life was short, but her impact was immense. She was more than a princess. She was a mother, a humanitarian, and a beacon of hope. Even after her death, Diana's legacy continues to inspire millions around the world. Diana's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, are the heart of her legacy. She raised them to be kind, compassionate, and connected to the people they serve. William and Harry often speak about how much their mother shaped their lives. "She was the best mom," Harry once said. "She filled our home with love and laughter." As adults, William and Harry carry on Diana's work. They support causes close to her heart, like mental health, children's welfare, and homelessness. They've also spoken openly about their grief, helping others understand that it's okay to ask for help. William has taken on many royal duties, but he never forgets his mother's influence. His focus on mental health reflects Diana's belief in breaking down stigmas. With his wife, Catherine, William continues to promote kindness and understanding. Harry, too, has followed in Diana's footsteps. He's worked to remove landmines, just as his mother did. He's also supported charities for veterans and founded the Invictus Games, a sporting event for wounded soldiers. Like Diana, Harry values compassion and action. Beyond her family, Diana's legacy lives on in the causes she championed. Her work to end the stigma around AIDS changed how the world viewed the disease. By holding hands with AIDS patients, she showed that fear could be replaced with love. This courage continues to inspire health campaigns today. Many organizations still honor Diana for her early efforts to raise awareness. Her actions helped save lives and change minds. Diana's fight against landmines was another powerful part of her legacy. Her visit to Angola in 1997 brought global attention to the issue. Her bravery in walking through a minefield showed the world the dangers faced by innocent people every day. After her death, Diana's efforts helped lead to an international treaty to ban landmines. This treaty has saved countless lives, and her work is still remembered by those fighting for peace. Diana's dedication to children also left a lasting mark. She believed that every child deserved love, care, and protection. Her visits to orphanages and schools around the world inspired others to give back. Even today, Diana's example encourages people to get involved in charities that help children. Her warmth and empathy made these causes personal, not just political. But Diana's legacy isn't just about her work. It's about who she was. She was a woman who cared deeply for others, even when her own life was difficult. Her openness about her struggles, including her battle with bulimia, helped break the silence around mental health. Diana once said, "I want to be a queen in people's hearts." She achieved that and more. Her honesty and vulnerability allowed people to connect with her in a way they hadn't with other royals. She showed that even a princess could be human. Her influence also changed the royal family itself. Before Diana, the royal family was seen as distant and formal. Diana's warmth and approachability brought them closer to the public. She made people feel that the royals could care about everyday struggles. Her impact is still felt in how the royal family interacts with the public today. They are more involved, more relatable, and more focused on helping others. Diana's legacy paved the way for this change. Even in fashion, Diana's influence lives on. Her iconic style continues to inspire designers and fans around the world. But more than her clothes, it was how she wore them, with grace and confidence, that made her unforgettable. Diana's lasting legacy is also visible in the many tributes created in her honor. Statues, gardens, and charitable foundations bear her name. These places remind us of her kindness and the causes she cared about. The Diana Award, an organization dedicated to young people, celebrates her commitment to inspiring the next generation. It encourages young leaders to follow in Diana's footsteps by helping their communities. But perhaps the most powerful part of Diana's legacy is the love she inspired. People around the world felt connected to her. She made everyone she met feel special. Her ability to touch hearts was unmatched. Even now, more than 2 decades after her death, Diana's story continues to resonate. Books, documentaries, and films keep her memory alive. They remind us of her courage, compassion, and humanity. Diana once said, "Carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward." This simple idea captures the essence of her life. She believed in the power of kindness to change the world. Her sons, William and Harry, are proof of her legacy. They carry her values into their work, inspiring others to follow their example. But Diana's influence goes beyond her family. She left a mark on the world that will never fade. Looking back on Diana's life, we see a story of strength, love, and resilience. She faced challenges that few could imagine, but she never stopped caring for others. She used her fame to bring attention to those in need. Diana's legacy is a reminder that one person can make a difference. Whether it's a smile, a kind word, or a bold act of courage, small gestures can have a big impact. Diana's life may have ended too soon, but her spirit lives on. Through her sons, her causes, and the millions she inspired, Diana's legacy continues to shine. She will always be remembered as the people's princess, a woman who showed the world the power of kindness.